This week's guest is Kayla Scheanon. Kayla Scheanon is a licensed professional counselor, founder of a clothing line, and author of Don't Just Sit There, a How Not to and How To Guide for Counselors and Therapists. Kayla Scheanon, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We appreciate your time today. Thank you. So Kayla, my introduction certainly does not do justice to your career. Could you just take a few minutes to share your story? Where did you grow up? And why did you choose the career path that you did?
Sure. I'm actually from Ashtabula, Ohio, and I'm a licensed professional counselor in Meadville, Pennsylvania. I've always had a passion for mental health, and I believe it started when I was in seventh grade. I had my first experience with having my own therapist. My family was going through some changes and learning the importance of mental health. And I just remember just spending time with that therapist and thinking, wow, this is her job. She holds space for people every day. She clearly enjoyed her job and she made such a great difference in my life. So I just knew, that was going to be my passion.
You knew at that early age.
Yeah. I was yeah.
It was your calling. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So tell our listeners, what do licensed professional counselors do exactly? And how is your work different from people in the same field, such as a licensed professional clinical counselor?
So licensed professional counselors in the state of Pennsylvania, that's actually the higher licensure for counselors, and they're able to go out on their own and have their own practices, which is what I do, and just kind of pick their own population of people that they're comfortable working with in their own topics. Some other licensed professional counselors, they may work in like the VA setting or the hospital setting and provide care through there as well, which is very important work. So I have my own private practice, and it'll be 10 years this year. I absolutely love the clients that I work with, and they inspire me every day, which was a big part of the clothing line in the book, which we'll get to just give you. So licensed professional clinical counselor, that's actually used in other states. Ohio has that designation for the higher level. So LPC in Ohio is the first level. LPCC is the higher level, which is comparable to what I have in Pennsylvania, which is the LPC.
Got it. Thank you. And I forgot to ask you when you mentioned you're from Ohio, but you're in Pennsylvania now. Were you a Bengals fan over the weekend? Are you a Steelers fan? My listeners know I'm a big football fan, so I had to ask.
I just try to support everybody. And, a lot of my practice I do on the weekends because that's when people could use seen. So over the years, I haven't done a whole lot of sports, watching, but I love what I do. So I don't mind, being in the office on the weekends.
Fair enough. So you're on the front lines of mental health and wellness. What's happening out there, both in terms of what concerns you and the bright spots you may be seeing that give you reason for optimism?
So let's start with the bright spots, because that's what I like to do as a counselor. Right now, and during the past couple years, really, I think a lot of people have invested more in their mental health than ever before. We're seeing a large surge in utilization of mental health services. A large part of that is people saying, you know what, am I happy with what I'm doing? Their industry has been disrupted and they're saying, what would I really like to be doing? And they're coming to mental health counselors to have those conversations and that exploration in a safe place. So that's a bright spot that's happening. So some of the harder spots right now are people have been obviously in the house more, and families that have had, mental abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, any of those kinds of things, that has been cranked up a bit because of the stress. So that's been harder. And some of those people who don't have access to counselors outside of the home, it's hard for them to have even telemed visits because they're in home with the people that may be causing them, the abuse. So those are kind of some of the harder spots right now that are going on.
The show started early on in COVID in the fall of 2020, and it's based on empowerment, well-being, and leadership through adversity, but it's taken a natural migration, I guess I'll call it, to more of a focus on the mental health space because of COVID. You just highlighted a lot of different things that we're unfortunately seeing more of in terms of physical abuse, mental abuse, alcohol abuse, and addiction. I've been saying for months, if not over a year now, that we seem to be coming out of COVID 2.0 or 3.0 right now, wherever we are. But what's your sense on, I've been calling it a tsunami. Is there going to be a mental health tsunami once we get back to whatever that new norm is, where we don't have to wear a mask, we don't have to take a test every time we go see friends or family?
Mhm. There's definitely going to be a huge adjustment period, and that's going to look different for everyone. Someone who has had like a history of anxiety or maybe even OCD, they may have a harder time, readjusting back with good understanding. We've all been through so much over the last couple of years. But I truly think if people have access to help and support, and we ease back in, or we create new ways of doing things, that adjustment will be made easier.
Well, we're very thankful and appreciative of having, people in the front lines like yourself out there helping us get through this, because, like you said, there's so many different challenges out there that's, step by step, day by day right now. And so, again, thank you for the work that you do. What are some of the biggest challenges that families are facing these days?
Hmm. I think that like income, some people have income stressors throughout this pandemic, so anytime there's an increase in stress, whether it be financial or a big change, families struggle. So if they were already having challenges communicating, that's been cranked up a bit. And understanding how another person is feeling, we have to be pretty connected and pretty good at understanding ourselves before we can understand our family members and the other people we're interacting with. So that's posed a challenge for sure.
And are those same stressors the same for couples, or are their challenges different because there are fewer family dynamics involved?
I think it depends on the person or the family, right? Like one couple may have an easier time, and they may be, that all has to do with how well each person is in the family. If it's a couple and they're both pretty healthy, they can navigate it, they can grow stronger through this together. The outcome might be a little bit more simple. But I've also seen some families that they embrace adversity and they really do well, and everybody's rowing in the boat. Everybody's like putting in the effort. So I get to see a lot of that, which is great. But yeah, I think it just depends on the family and how well each person is individually.
And it seems like we've been talking forever at this point, as I mentioned, COVID 2.0, 3.0, wherever we are, and its impact on Americans' collective and individual mental health. Let's talk about that impact. How did the pandemic change the mental health of the people you see?
So it definitely increased anxiety. Someone who really didn't have an experience with anxiety before, the pandemic delivered it on a platter. So it increased anxiety, and people had never had it. As far as how it changed the mental health field, we are now able to deliver therapy and counseling, through the phone, right? And that was not accepted modality before, and now we're encouraged to do that, and we're being asked to do that, which is a great way to service the community.
And I know it's difficult to make generalizations, but as the pandemic eventually fades away, do you expect the mental health issues that it created will also fade away, or will its negative effects linger for a while?
I think that they will linger for a while, but I'm hoping that the conversation about mental health, and hopefully we are decreasing stigma, it's almost like we're increasing the awareness about mental health, the importance about mental health. And even though maybe mental health symptoms have increased, so has resources and support. So hopefully those two things will balance each other out. I'm hoping that people have invested more in their mental health during the pandemic, and that stays an important part of their lives, right? Not just something that we do whenever we're going through a major pandemic or a problem, but something that people regularly do. Like we regularly go to our physical health appointments, right? So why not, regularly check in with ourselves on the inside?
That's a great point. I've been talking to some people, and you look back in terms of things that we've learned over history, over time, as people. We learned that too much alcohol and tobacco is not good for you. In the 80s, we learned that exercise is good for you, and you make it part of your regular routine. And to your point, hopefully now mental health exercise, exercising your brain health becomes part of your normal routine. And so I totally agree with you. And I've been saying that I think the one positive thing about COVID is that it's put a big spotlight in the mental health space, but to your
Mhm.
point, in a very, very positive way.
Mhm.
So I hope I agree with you. I hope people follow your approach there. And well, you actually just mentioned this, did the pandemic change your approach beyond the Zoom call, like how you talk to your patients?
Um, well, there's been a lot of things that I've added, like during the time of the pandemic, to treatment or offered or encouraged. Um, so now we have Zooms, but we can also Zoom as a group. You can have groups of people who are all experienced maybe a setback with their job. And so now you can Zoom and do that in a safe way, which is something, we really hadn't done a whole lot of before. And then it's obviously like it's affected our happiness, like what makes us happy. Does our job make us happy? So I've incorporated so much more of who are you really and what would make you happy in terms of your career. There's more. Let's talk about what brings you joy, and are there different things we need to align and that we actually have the time to put in place right now with the pandemic. So pulling a lot more of that into the conversation.
I was reading an article over the weekend about relationships that focused on the collapse of a friendship. The author noted that, and I quote, "Our culture lacks the proper script for ending friendships. We have no rituals to observe, no paperwork to do, no boilerplate dialogue to crib from. You work almost every day with people who are struggling with relationships. Let's talk about ending relationships and their potential effects on us. When is it healthy to end a relationship?"
So I actually talk about this a lot with people regularly, probably every day. I think that the people that you surround yourself with every day, whether it's your friends, coworkers, obviously partners, it's so important that the people around you it's a reciprocal giving in both direction relationship. Is the person bringing positive energy into your life? Are you bringing positive energy into this other person's life? If the answer is no, it's not reciprocal, there's not positive energy flowing from both sides, and it seems to be like a consistent thing, not that they're just struggling for a little bit and, can get back on track. I think it's healthy to make a choice to prioritize your mental health and end a relationship in that case. Are you familiar with who Brene Brown is?
Unfortunately, I'm not. Sorry.
Okay, so she's amazing. She is a PhD social worker. She's actually huge. She's done so many TED Talks and wonderful books. In one of her books, she talks about vulnerability and the importance of having just a couple people, one, two, or three people in your life that you can be totally open and vulnerable with. And those people should fit on a 1 inch by 1 inch little piece of paper that you feel comfortable with. You shouldn't put 12 acquaintances or value like 12 acquaintances as friends. You should just have a couple people that if you tell them something that's totally vulnerable for you, they can say, wow, I'm really glad you told me that, and just kind of hold space for you and support you. Those are the type of relationships that you want to keep and nurture and hold on to. And the ones that don't make the 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper, those are the ones that it's okay to let go of.
So then when is it healthy for us to try to preserve a relationship that might be floundering?
I think you have to ask yourself, what's the value of that relationship for me? Over the span of that relationship, what's the value? And that's a personal question that each person has to ask themselves, right? And sometimes during the course of a relationship, we've evolved, hopefully. Each person has their own evolution. And if it makes sense, like, have I evolved past this relationship that it doesn't make sense? It's not a life-giving relationship for me anymore. And that would be okay to let go at that time.
And the story I'm referencing is the latest issue of The Atlantic, focuses in part on envy and how surprisingly little that social science has to say about envy in a friendship. But
Mhm.
the author cites Gore Vidal, who once famously complained, "Every time a friend succeeds, something inside of me dies." Certainly, that same dynamic exists within many family relationships, especially among competitive siblings. Do you find yourself dealing with the negative effects of envy as you work with families and couples? And what advice do you offer so that we can celebrate others' success rather than feeling envious? I just threw a lot at you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think it's such an important topic and it comes into the therapy office all of the time. So when there's envy present, the person who's feeling it needs to take a step back and whether it's by themselves or with a counselor, whoever, say, where is this coming from within me? Because if that feeling is within you, it's only yours. It's not about that other person. So taking that step back, exploring it, it's usually some insecurity of ours that we, developed along the way, but we can work through it. Truly, when we are whole and complete and feeling good on the inside, we will rejoice when other people have successes because we're feeling good. If we're not feeling good and we're not whole and complete and evolving, we're gonna be, even jealous. Let's like that's a powerful word. So we just need to take a step back and look at that within ourselves.
Oftentimes, we're closer to some of our friends than we are to some of our family. In those cases, is the distance between us and our family members harder on us subconsciously than we may recognize? Or are we better off recognizing that we can't choose our family members and it's healthier to gravitate to people to whom we feel more connected?
I think that friends are such a beautiful family of choosing and of choice. So we're born into these families and then we evolve throughout our lifetime. And we choose friends who kind of have commonalities with us, right? That we connect with in maybe different ways than our family of origin. There's value in family of origin connection, right? That's the kind of the pack that you came from and that connection there. And there's so much equal important value in our friendships and the people we connect with out of choice.
The article noted that politics, even when we share the same beliefs, can be a big, under-discussed friendship ender. We've seen it happen more and more in recent years, and people may dread going home for the holidays or fear taking a particular family member on the opposite side of the political spectrum. What have you seen in your practice? Have politics become a family divider?
Yes. Oh my goodness, they became such a family divider over the last couple of years, of course. And what I wanted to say was I get to see a lot of people getting out there in the dating realm, right? Huge. I've never seen as many people before put their political party right front and center of their Match.com profile, right? But it was such a big divider. So I do think if you're strong, like if you feel very strong about your political beliefs, it is good to put that out front. That way people that you connect with will be similar to you, right? Um, but yeah, that was huge and so interesting over the last couple years. And then as far as families go, I encourage people to connect and talk about the things that are not politically, and like just enjoy the Thanksgiving turkey and the fact that you're all able to be there if people were lucky enough to be together, because of COVID on Thanksgiving. And like, if we can we leave politics at home?
And for those people you mentioned that put it out there on their Match.com profile, do you think they're looking for birds of a feather, similar thought
Yes.
beliefs?
Oh yeah, yes they are. And a lot of the people that I know, they're thinking about maybe they already have children and they're thinking about who's going to influence my children as well, or maybe having children and how would we raise them? How would we kind of support and orient them? And hopefully we would be similar in that, which I think is important.
Some people offer a simple solution to the politics problem. Just don't talk about it with family members who have different opinions. But the underlying tensions, and sometimes even resentment or anger are still there. Is there
Mhm.
any way we can fix that?
Well, it just depends on how. So some people are so rigid about their beliefs. And usually, you may see that come up with their political conversation, but that's the aspect of their personality, and it goes deeper than just politics. So if you have a person that's extremely rigid, you're not going to change somebody else. You're not going to. So if it's important to you, sure, you try to have that conversation. But if you recognize, I have these beliefs, I'm pretty flexible, but it's not worth the conflict and like damaging the relationship, I really don't see a point in pushing it or forcing it. You're not going to change other people's beliefs. They have to evolve themselves in their own lives.
Okay, so let's flip that coin over. What does it take to create an emotionally healthy family?
Flexibility, right? So you've heard me use the word rigid. So the opposite of rigid, flexible. Parents, whatever that looks like, because we have so many wonderful, beautiful, different types of families out there now. So flexibility amongst adults, flexibility amongst the children in the family, encouraging individual thought processes over the course of having a family, not just supporting each other, not judging each other. Flexibility.
Not judging, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I've got 3 kids and 2 of them are girls, and that's a big thing of the dinner conversation. I've heard before that it's difficult for many people to create healthy relationships because we carry more than our own baggage. Often our baggage includes that of our parents and whatever problems and challenges they may have had, and those handed down by generations before them. What does it take to unload that baggage? Do we have to reinvent ourselves? And if so, how do we do that?
Well, I am a therapist. So I'm just going to put in a plug for finding a counselor or therapist you connect with. And that might be someone of similar age, or maybe they have children. And, the hope is that you'll find a therapist that has done some of that work on their own baggage, because we're all human, and they're able to walk beside you or beside us as you're unpacking that for yourself. If you're a parent, you owe it to yourself and your kids to unpack your baggage and to be a good role model of them doing that during the course of their lifetime too. But also that can be done. So going to therapy isn't the only thing. There's so awesome people out there writing books, writing articles, YouTube, TED Talks, TikTok. Oh my gosh, there's wonderful information on there too. Instagram. We're at a place in our culture where you can grow and evolve in so many ways from so many different platforms. Musicians, they're a big part of our growth too.
It's amazing to think that, did you ever think you would say 2 years ago that you can get mental health treatment from TikTok? I mean, it didn't even exist.
No. And actually TikTok is something that during the pandemic, I found, actually one of my younger clients told me about it. It's like, you have to go on there, So now I probably have of my own, I don't know, maybe 4,000 videos I've made myself on there. And I have so much fun with it. And so I put out information regarding mental health and things like that. But I also have fun, and it's a comedic release. But yeah, I never thought I'd say, hey, go watch this video. But what's great about it, Chris? People are being vulnerable on there and putting out there how they're unpacking their baggage. And that to somebody else who's wanting to become vulnerable and do that for themselves is invaluable. It's amazing.
Yeah, totally agree. And where can our listeners find you on TikTok?
So Kayla Ann Self Evolve is my handle on there, and they're welcome to add me and watch my videos.
Awesome. We'll be sure to get that in our social media as well. I was tempted to say that this segment of the podcast is for therapists and counselors, but the fact is there's plenty of valuable information that the rest of us will glean from it. Your book, Don't Just Sit There, A How Not To and How To Guide for Counselors and Therapists, was just released in December. It's described as a blend of therapist and client humor, along with connecting strategies for the clinician to use. And it's meant to share what clients appreciate during the therapy process. What prompted you to write the book?
So there is a publisher in the building that I have my office in. It's called Fulton Publishing. And I like to do things or try things that then I can say to my clients, hey, you should you should write your book and go publish it. And here's a way to do it. So oftentimes I find myself saying that. So this was one of those things that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do that. There's a couple books inside of me. Let me go ahead, and they're a part of my building here, and they're a wonderful company. So that's what prompted that. And then the book itself, over the last 10 years, I've had people come to me and say, okay, so I'm coming to you because my last therapist fell asleep. And of course I'm horrified, right? Because like, if there's one thing we can do for our clients, it's stay awake, right? And of course so much more, but like, that's like one of the first things. So, we would get a chuckle out of that, the clients and I, and then, start connecting and building our own therapeutic relationship. And I like to ask, what works for them? What doesn't work for them? Let me know during the process what's working and not working so that we can adjust and adapt things as needed. So that was really what motivated me to write it. And then I think looking at life with humor and being able to laugh is an important part of mental health. So why not write a book that combines all of those things together and that can be useful?
So I'm guessing don't fall asleep with your client in the room is the number one not to do?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That's
all right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So without giving away everything in your book, because we want to make sure that people take time to buy it and read it, what are a few important pieces of advice for counselors and therapists that they should do?
So be present, right? We live in this society where we're on our phones a lot. We can't help it. We need to be, or our smartwatches and all of those things. So during that hour, be fully present, listen. Your mind can go all of these different places, but being present is one of the most important things.
And how does somebody know when they found the right therapist to speak with? Are there certain traits they should look for? Or does it just sort of click and you get it, there's a match?
So usually I will see so people will come in body. So body posture, people will come in, very tight and, their shoulders very tight and everything. And you'll almost kind of see just a relaxation, Chris, you can see there's a love seat behind me, and that's usually where people will sit. So they'll relax a little bit into the sofa and almost kind of like a big sigh. And they'll actually, let out that nervous energy or that air. And usually by the end of the first or second time, they'll say, I'm really benefiting from this. I'm feeling better leaving than when I walked in today. And that's huge.
And what are some things that you feel strongly that therapists and counselors should not do besides falling asleep?
So be quick to diagnose. It takes time. You have to get to know your client before you can really decide what their symptoms, are all adding up to. Diagnosis is not the most important thing, but sometimes in the billing and insurance world, we're kind of nudged into that right away. So take your time. Spend those first couple of sessions with that person. Look at every single person with a brand new set of eyes. No one's story is going to be the same, and not one person's experience of even the pandemic is going to be the same. So really listening, observing, and taking your time to understand them as best as possible. Don't put your biases into the situation. Be inquisitive. Always keep that inquisitive nature to the process.
You mentioned listening being one of the key skills and traits.
Mm-hmm.
After listening to and working to solve so many other people's problems, what do you do to maintain your own mental well-being? I mean, that has to be a heavy burden that you and all counselors carry every day. Do you turn to colleagues? Who's the counselor's counselor?
So I do a couple things, which you'll enjoy this. I already told you, Chris, about TikTok. And if you go on my TikTok, you'll see I'm dancing and singing and doing all kinds of things. But the other thing that you'll see right across the street from my office is a self-defense studio. It's called Valor Combat Academy, and this is of Meadville, Pennsylvania. And the instructor over there, Aaron Diaz, wonderful person. He held a workshop for myself and women that I counsel about a year ago to teach them the basics of self-defense. If someone's coming up to you and you're uncomfortable, how do you handle that with your body posture and with your words, and some ways to preserve yourself. So after workshop about a year ago, I started going over there a couple times a week for individual lessons. And I place that in my work day because it really breaks it up. It gets that physical energy and that stress out. And we laugh and we have fun. And that's so important for my mental health.
And for someone who's looking for a good licensed professional counselor, what questions should they ask to make sure that they have the right match and the right counselor therapist for them?
I would ask that person, how have you dealt with adversity in your life? How have you evolved in your life? Or what methods have you done? You don't want to go to someone who's never been through a struggle in their lives and come through it and are able to talk about it a little bit in an appropriate way. I think it's important that you go to someone who's been to a therapist, who has been on the opposite side of the room at some point. Very important to do that. Of course, I think they should go to someone that meets their needs. Do the hours meet their needs? Are they able to get there? If they're not able to get there easily or within their week, that's not going to be something they can consistently continue to do as well. So some of those practical things are really just as important as well.
I understand that you also lead workshops. Are those for counselors and therapists, or families and individuals, or both?
So they're for everybody. Right now, the workshops that I'm doing, I have a self-love workshop, which that's between 12 and 15 people that come weekly. And we build self-worth and self-love. And that's been really, really good. In a couple weeks here, I'm starting a workshop pairing with Valor Combat Academy. And we're going to do an 8-week build your self-worth combined with your physical strength. And combining physical and mental health. So that's something that we're doing too. But I'm open to doing it with everybody. And that's the sort of therapist that I am, the counselor that I am. I have so many people, doctors, nurses, custodians, you name it, counselors, they're all my clients. So everybody is kind of a part of it.
Well, that's so important to your point, the full spectrum of society, and everybody's dealing with different things now. And so I love that you're able to bring them all together. Do you do these workshops just in your area? Do you travel? Do you invite people from around the country to come see you?
So anybody can come see me at any time or contact me. So some people will Zoom in from different parts of the country. They'll Zoom into the workshops. We're going to have someone from New Mexico Zooming into the next one, which is exciting to me. So definitely future, I want to do more of that. I have a lot of people who are able to come in person that are here locally, and that's wonderful too. And in the future, I'd love to expand to more of a vacation retreat setting and have workshops in that way.
Love that idea. Count me in.
Yeah.
And where can people find you if they want to be part of the workshop? How do they contact you?
They can contact me. Well, my phone number is the easiest way. And is that able to be linked to the show?
Sure. We got social media, also your LinkedIn profile, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, we can link all of those things. Definitely the easiest way is to call, honestly, or to text me, and then we'll do a Zoom and we'll figure out what that person is interested, what I can offer them, and what would make sense for them.
Terrific. Thank you. So your book is only your latest venture. You also developed a clothing line, Self Evolver, to promote mental wellness, and that's how you and I met. Found an article about that, the business. Share the spark of that venture with us. What was the impetus for that?
So it's such an exciting story. I had put a couple t-shirts in the waiting room of my office here just to kind of give back to the clients and encourage them. I was seeing all the growth that they were doing, and I wanted to give them something. So on t-shirts I had made, there were words, like one said strength, one said courageous, and then one said self-evolver. And over the last 10 years, that had been something that had popped into my mind when seeing how much people were evolving and just kicking butt at, rocking their mental health and their goals. So these self-evolver shirts flew off the rack in the waiting room first, gone, done. And so that, I was like, oh my gosh, they're really identifying with that. That's great. And it's so important to me that mental health be something that's a positive, that you're proud of. You're proud of your adventure and your journey with your mental health. And I wanted something wearable that people could wear, you know.
How do you see Self-Evolver reducing stigma and increasing individual pride?
I see it as a platform that people will be able to use. Right now, people can write in and become ambassadors, and their story, their self-evolver story that they're comfortable with writing and putting online is posted on the actual website, selfevolver.co, along with a picture of themselves. And then, of course, they would get product sent to them that they can then post on their social media. But it's a, it's a place where they can say, this is my story and I'm proud of it. Read this. I want it to be out there, and I want to then wear this t-shirt or this hat or whatever that they pick with pride.
And what's your ultimate vision for the business itself? Where do you want to take it, and how long do you think it'll take to get there?
So the sky's the limit, like I could see it. I could even see it being something that's like self-evolver vacation retreats, and there's that built into these retreats, and moving your evolution along even more during that trip you take. I think the sky's the limit, and I think it's definitely dictated by people who identify with this brand. What do they want? So now that we're talking about it, I almost think it's going to be like a group of people that we're going to have conversations about, what should we do next, guys? What do you think would be the next step in decreasing stigma, increasing pride for your mental health? And what do you want that to look like? I want it to be something that's not dictated by me, but it's developed by people who identify with the brand.
You have a new book, a clothing line, and a counseling practice. Are you going to consolidate that base this year, or do you have other plans? Regular listeners and viewers know one of my favorite questions for authors is whether they have another book in the works, or at least in their heads. How about it?
So I want to write another book. There'll probably be a little bit of humor in it, but it's going to be a little more of a serious book about codependency. Are you familiar with that term?
I'm not. We were talking earlier before the show about your LinkedIn post I happened to see this morning. Yeah, please share with our listeners.
So codependency is something that I'm like proudly recovering from, and probably always will be. It's when you prioritize the needs of others over your own, and then that in turn is detrimental, to you and to your health. A lot of people will develop that if their family of origin, someone had a big mental health problem and the rest of the family orbited around that person or walked on eggshells around that person, or maybe someone in the family had an addiction. So what the kids in that family learn is that their needs are put on the side, and you need to focus on people with problems. So I've really learned in my life how to balance, and center. And it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's something that's a continual, it's a continual journey. So I want to write a book based on that idea, and then some ideas and tips and tricks that I've kind of learned along the way and continue to evolve with. And then I want to continue to build Self-Evolver, continue to focus on my private practice, because my clients are so important to me, and to welcome in, if there's anybody who thinks that I would be a good fit for them, I welcome people to Zoom or come, to the office to meet.
You work in practice as a professional counselor in Pennsylvania. In many ways, many parts of your state, along with Ohio and West Virginia, have been at the epicenter of the opioid epidemic. When did you begin to notice its impact on families? And was there a moment when you said, this is a really big problem?
Mm-hmm. So this is sad. When I started to get an influx of children, so people under the age of 10 that were coming to me without both parents, that had overdosed, unfortunately, and passed on, or even one of their parents. So that was within the last year. I saw an influx of that, like even more than ever before. Which is very sad. So we need to support the people who are here that have lost people. And then as a society, we need to support each other. And, as much as we can. It's such a big, broad topic of how can we support families, but the families need support. Obviously, the person with the struggle, they need monumentous support. It takes everybody. Everybody needs to be able to lend a helping hand in any way.
Do you think we've turned the corner on the opioid crisis yet?
I'm hoping. I think that we've we've increased, hopefully, access to services, and hopefully that will continue to increase. And that needs to be holistic services. You know how I talk about self-defense and moving your body and mental health, holistic access to services. I know just from meeting with people in the medical profession, we're cutting down on what's prescribed and when and why, and giving the local hospital here that has the pain management clinic, they have a therapist, and a wonderful one, that works with people prior to prescribing pain medication to see if it's something that can be managed on that level before we go to pain meds. So there are things in place that I think it's nearing the direction of helping, that crisis.
Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
How have you found the time to start a business while writing a book, raising young children, and counseling families and couples? I'm sure our audience would love to know some of your time management skills and habits.
So one of my mottos, I'm a Capricorn, so I was born in January, and I'm just like naturally like this, let's do it. Yeah, let's go for it. So I think that's a big part of it. But it takes a village, right? So I have the most amazing babysitter, and I feel bad even calling her that, because she's like a family member of ours now, that even during the pandemic, she never said that she could not watch my daughter or showed fear in the face of the pandemic. Of course, we took the precautions and to keep everybody safe. But that's huge, having childcare for parents, whether there's two parents or whether they're single parents, it's vital for those parents to continue to work, let alone go after other endeavors, that they want to. Anything that I've pursued, I've thought to myself first, will this help my daughter? I just have one. She just turned 3 Saturday. Will this help my daughter? Yes. Self-Evolver, decreasing mental health stigma, increasing access to mental health services, teaching other people that self-defense strategies, holistic, all of these things help her. Will writing a book help her? Yes, because maybe someday she'll say, I want to write a book, and my mom did it, so I can do it. So she's a big motivator. When I left my house this morning, I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff on the floor, but my daughter's happy. I'm happy. Sometimes you have to let those things go to do the bigger things.
We have just a few minutes left. How can people in our audience find your book, and how can they find your clothing line?
Okay, so the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble online. You type in Don't Just Sit There, and you can put my name, Kayla Scheanon, and it should pop up for you on both of those. And then the clothing line is selfevolver.co. That's the website. And Self-Evolver is also on Facebook and Instagram. Self-Evolver brand would be the Instagram handle there.
What advice do you have for audience about how they can feel better and be closer to family and friends this year?
So I think the more that they connect with themselves, and that might be yoga or meditation, getting enough rest, taking good care of self. So self-care is important. And then that way, when you interact with your family and friends, you're feeling pretty good. It being kind of, I'm in Pennsylvania, right? So the winter is pretty ferocious right now, and seasonal depression is kind of at its height. So I want people to know that don't forget that people love you and care about you. And if you are feeling isolated, reach out, even if it's just a text to someone. And if you notice that someone in your family or friend group, you haven't heard from them, they're probably struggling a little. So reach out to them.
And what can and should we do individually to be more empowered, triumph over adversity, and achieve our goals in 2022?
It's all about our thinking. If you keep track of your thoughts, where are your thoughts going? Are they going in a hopeful, positive direction? Or are your thoughts, what if this is going to happen? Or, oh, not this again, and of course, counseling and therapy can help you if you are kind of stuck in that thinking. But as much as possible, be mindful of your thinking, watch it, and try to channel it in the direction of hope and positivity.
Kayla Scheanon, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you to our wonderful audience for tuning in to Next Steps Forward. I'm Chris Meek. For more details about upcoming shows and guests, please follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Chris Meek public figure and on Twitter at Chris Meek_USA. We'll be back next Tuesday, same time, same place, with another leader from the world of business, politics, public policy, sports, or entertainment. Until then, stay safe and keep taking your next steps forward.